Now, straight away to a story that's going to get bigger as the week progresses here in Nigeria. Because a year ago this week, a group of angry protesters organized a sit-in outside the office of the governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu. They wanted the infamous police unit, the anti-robbery squad known as EndSARS, to be disbanded. It had long been accused of extortion, arbitrary detentions, and human rights abuses. The EndSARS protest spread from social media onto the streets of Nigeria and to cities across the world. Let's take a look at some of those protests and the response from President Buhari.
People are misunderstanding what we are doing here. They think we are here to shout that the police should go. EndSARS should. We are trying to say that our police system is useless. The system.
What we're having now is not just EndSARS. There's an end result. The end result is good governance. And the youth are going to sit down until they see that they have taken the necessary steps.
On Monday, 12th October, I acknowledge the genuine concerns and agitations of members of the public regarding the excessive use of force by some members of SARS. The choice to demonstrate peacefully is a fundamental right of citizens as enshrined in Section 40 of our Constitution and other enactments. But this right to protest also imposes on the demonstrators the responsibility to respect the rights of other citizens and the necessity to operate within the law. I would like to appeal to protesters to note and take advantage of the various well-thought-out initiatives of this administration designed to make their lives better and more meaningful, and resist the temptation of being used by some subversive elements to cause chaos with the aim of truncating our nascent democracy.
President Buhari some 12 months ago. Well, for more on those EndSARS protests a year ago this week and what has changed since then, I'm joined now in the studio by the human rights activist and national coordinator of Concerned Nigerians, Deji Adeyanju. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
I know you're studying law at the moment, so taking the time off to come and speak to us is something we welcome and appreciate very much.
Thank you very much.
And just look back to that time a year ago, because you took part in those protests. How remarkable a time was that week of EndSARS protests, young people coming together and deciding to fight back?
Yes. Basically, the whole EndSARS protest didn't just start last year. It started about in 2017 when myself, Segun Awosanya, and a few others, we gathered together and we said we were having too many complaints about police brutality in the country. And we said to ourselves, we need to set up a platform that not just gather data about all the human rights abuses and violations, that we need to set up a mechanism. And there should be a win-win situation where we can reach out to the authorities directly, so that it doesn't look as if we're just being always confrontational and that we always just want to criticize the government. So we were thinking of what name will best be appropriate for the movement. First, we thought of Stop SARS, we thought of Scrap SARS. Then Sega just said, why not EndSARS? I said, that's amazing. So that was how we came up with the slogan. And we started the protest, I remember vividly, in 2017 at Unity Fountain, we started the EndSARS protest after a young man was brutally murdered in Lagos. I think Kolade Johnson, thereabout. He was brutally murdered extrajudicially in the glare of the public. And it was being live streamed while his extrajudicial murder, was taking place. So we set up the EndSARS movement back then. And I remember our first or second rally, Aisha Yusufa, a lot of other people joined us, and then people were skeptical. People were like, oh, these guys are just joking. Nothing is going to really come out of this. But we were persistent. We kept, the hashtag was trending for almost a year plus. In 2018, it trended again. In 2019, it trended again. In 2020, it trended again. Then myself, Showore, and a few others started strategizing. We said, how can we make this to come alive again? So we had the first rally here in Abuja at the force headquarters, in front of the force headquarters. I remember the police officers in front of the force headquarters, they were joking, they were laughing at us that we are just wasting time, nothing is going to come out of this protest and all that. You know, they treated the protest with levity. But we got so many people, young people, Reno, Jide, Oshoks, this young firebrand. We said to ourselves from day one, if this protest was to be successful, the conventional faces should not lead this protest. You know, and I think we had this back and forth with Aisha Yusufa, Showore, a few people who have been, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, people who have been at the helm of affairs for years protesting on the streets. And we said to ourselves, we said we must take the back seat and allow Nigerians, because we've been yearning for Nigerians to come to the street. In our generation,
to see people who were not almost that perception of professional protesters.
Exactly.
You wanted to see the
to
people.
Be people driven.
Right.
So that was why we behind the scenes we did a whole lot to make the protest happen, because our concern was that we wanted the protest to be sustainable for the first 3 days at most. We wanted people to go on the street, sleep on the street, do the midnight. You know, and we have this change. We had organized everything. And, you know, all I can say is that I want to thank each and every one for, especially the young guys in Lagos, Juwon, and every other person in Lagos who stayed all through the night, despite the police victimization on the first night and the second night, because those were the crucial nights, because this protest was for 3 whole weeks. So, and in fact, I went to the protest venue, I left Abuja, went to the protest venue at night, around 1 a.m. at night.
You went to Lagos?
Yes, to Lagos on the second day, just to inspire them and say, we cannot leave this place. But I didn't announce myself going there, because the purpose will have been defeated.
Absolutely.
If the government knew that, if once they say it's Deji Showore that is behind it, they will say, oh, they will label it. Oh, it's opposition. Or Showore contested for president, he's aggrieved. No. We wanted this to be, because the killings were too many, and Nigerians were genuinely affected by the outcomes of all these extrajudicial killings. So we handed the protest back to the people, you know, and the third day, after they were attacked, the celebrities joined, musicians joined. It was spontaneous. So immediately we witnessed that, we said, finally.
In fact, beyond those people, the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Because across the world.
In fact, the hashtag for EndSARS overtook Black Lives Matter at some point. So for us, yes, the protests were subsequently disrupted by government, pro-government thugs, and, you know, here and there security agencies. The army was shooting at citizens who were waving flags and sitting on the floor. However, the greatest achievement of the protest, the EndSARS protest, is that it has reawakened that in our lifetime, because many young people never believed things like this could happen.
Well, that was going to be my next question to you. Was it a successful protest, or did it end up not really achieving much? Obviously, it achieved certain things. I mean, they ended the SARS police unit and so on. But insecurity remains very high in Nigeria. The police are said by many to still be extorting money from people. So, by that measure, it didn't really achieve much, did it?
Well, I think it achieved tremendously so much. And the reason why I say achieved tremendously so much is because, you see, prior to them, the police, they felt that they could do anything and just get away with it. Now, they do know the actions have consequences. Because we saw the police and the entire establishment for the 3 weeks. They didn't just abandon their duty. No. They realized that this culture of impunity, listen, taxpayers are servants of the people. If you read the Constitution, government exists. The primary responsibility of government is protection of lives and property. Government enjoys its sovereignty from the mandate that the people have restored in it. And that's why if you read the Constitution, we say, we the people of Nigeria haven't agreed. It's a social contract between those who are led and those who are leading. So if there is distrust, and One unfortunate thing about the current government is that it has exhausted its credibility limit. And that's why at the peak of the EndSARS, at various stages of the EndSARS, government was reaching out to negotiate. But because government had exhausted its credibility limit, people could not trust the government. Look at the president said he has acknowledged he was going to set up a panel. Till today, those were just political statements. Nothing significant or tangible has been done.
I'm going to ask you that when we come back from the break, because that's an important barometer for measuring the success of those protests. But to be fair, and I think you touched on that briefly, immediately after the protest, the security forces appeared to have moderated their behavior and came across as somewhat more careful, didn't they? But that didn't last very long. Everyone seems to have returned to their bad behavior. I mean, all you got to do is drive through the streets and they're still there doing some of the things people complained about, which was not specific to SARS, but involved the entire police force.
Why is it that the road safety, the Federal Road Safety Corps, is more well behaved than the police and they don't even carry guns? Why is it that as bad as the DSS may
Well, maybe it's because they don't carry guns.
No. It's about training. No. It's about training. The way the police officers are trained in the police college, there are various colleges, they are badly trained. The SSS, believe me, as power drunk as they can get, they can be extremely professional, extremely. And if you had courses to engage with them or you've been arrested by them, you will see the level of professionalism.
And obviously you've encountered
I've encountered them. Under this government, I've been arrested 9 times, charged to court 3 times. So I am pretty loved by the government. So there is no how that you can say, I have encountered almost all the security agencies. So the level of unprofessionalism in the police is endemic. So, and it is corruption that is fueling it. Because if you see, what were we protesting for? We said better welfare for them. The barracks are still worse off.
Right.
They are ill-equipped.
So you actually incorporated them
our 5 demands,
system.
it was clear. It was clear that there's no way that you send a frustrated man to the street and you expect him to be productive.
And give him a gun.
Yeah, you give him a gun. So he sees the gun as a tool of exploitation.
Okay, please stay with us. We're going to come back and talk some more. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the human rights activist Deji Adeyanju about the EndSARS protests, which took place a year ago this week. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Enyegolu. Now, it began as a protest against police brutality, the EndSARS protests, but it's now broader and deeper. Millions of young people in Nigeria today say they want to see big change across the country with regard to good governance and are demanding the dividends of democracy in a country they say democracy only works for the few, not the many. So, a year ago this week, young Nigerians united for just a few days at least, regardless of their ethnic affiliations and political and religious differences, to demand change. So, are politicians now listening when they weren't before? And one of those at the forefront of those EndSARS protests a year ago this week, the human rights activist and national coordinator of Concerned Nigerians, Deji Adeyanju, is still with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us. And let me just make the point that Deji is studying law at the moment, will be graduating at the end of December. So opponents better watch out, because now he's got the legal capacity to take on you lot. And we talked briefly before we went on break about all those panels and all the rest of it that were set up. Yes. Is there any update on these security forces and police who perpetuated these alleged acts of violence?
Yes, the only effective panel so far has been the Lagos panel, because it has awarded compensations to victims. Aside Lagos, nothing really, not even the one at the National Human Rights Commission has been that effective. And I must give credit to my brother, Ojukwu, who heads the National Human Rights Commission. The will is there, but the body language of the government, does not give the required support. And one will have expected a president who was tear-gassed, harassed by the police on the street.
President Buhari.
Yes, President Buhari has been a victim of injustice. You know, President Buhari was tear gas. His former vice presidential candidate, Chuba Okadegbo, was tear gas and subsequently died as a result. So, you see, Nigerians are asking for the irreducible minimums. We're not asking to go to space. We are not asking to be driven to have scientific or kinetic innovations. We're just asking for the barest. People say they want to be able to drive on the road without being killed by the police. How does that become science fiction? You know, so the things that the demands of the EndSARS protests were so basic and they're fundamental in nature. So that's why many people, you know, were at a loss that how can something that benefits not just the citizenry, but the police itself, if you reform the police benefits and the country, it's a win-win situation for the country. The human rights index of the country will improve, you know, the trust between the citizenry and the police system will work, government will take the credit. So forget about what previous government did or didn't do. This is a president who had been a victim of police brutality himself. So why do we need to explain to him why police reform should be important?
Well, in fairness to him, he responded positively at the time.
But nothing has been done.
But can you at least look at the impact those protests made and say you made the Nigerian government to pay attention to allegations of police brutality and to young people in this country who spoke up volubly, perhaps as never before?
You see, the reason why the president responded at the time he did was because government was confused at the time. Before they resorted to recruiting thugs and state-sponsored mercenaries to kill protesters, government was at a loss of how to handle the protest. And on this same channel, the president came on this same channel and said EndSARS protest was to remove him from office. So you can imagine the perception that the president had. So anyhow you look at it, whether to the left or to the right, the basic analysis from all that the feedback that the president gives is that he does not understand the need to genuinely reform the police.
So there was a sense of hostility towards the people who did that.
Exactly. Listen, the president is not the president of APC or PDP. He's the president of all Nigerians, including police officers, including victims of police brutality. So the president must see himself. And a president who is exiting office, whether you like it or not, like I keep saying, it's not too late for the president to do what is right. The president can still reform the police in the next 1 year, you know. So because as an outgoing president, you know, and when I use the term outgoing, the president is leaving office soon. So as an outgoing president, this is the point where you need to start worrying about your legacy, you know, and what legacy will Buhari bequeath to the next president.
But let's talk about the legacy of those EndSARS protests. Where do those protests go from here? A year on? Has the agenda changed or widened for people who are perhaps more frustrated about other issues beyond police brutality in Nigeria? Because the protests expanded to include demonstrations against bad governance.
You see, EndSARS itself was a metaphor because there were several other issues. So EndSARS provided a platform to aggregate the collective anger. At the protest venue here in Abuja and Lagos, you see people who bring different things of concern on the banners and be waving it at people, you know, at the cameras. The reason was because of the level of frustration and despair in the country. So anyhow you look at it, you know, it's in the best interest of the ruling elite and the government to realize that when the protests had happened, if anybody had told the government that any protest will have happened and shut down the country for 3 weeks, they wouldn't have believed. So it's in their own interest, you know, to carry genuine reforms across board, you know, whether it be governance related, whether it be educational. You can see our country is a paradox of some sort. This is a country where we have EFCC headquarters is 12-story building, but there's no hospital in Nigeria that has even 7-story building. So it's a paradox of some sort. So with the whole COVID-19 pandemic thing, chief of staff to the president died, close people to the president died. Look at how many the victims of COVID-19 and the attendant effect it has on our economy. No single lesson had been learned. All the donations from our development partners, United States, Canada, Britain, none of the donations can be accounted for till today.
Right. Okay, let me return, because we've got a couple of minutes before we have to end the chat, unfortunately. But let me just return to the EndSARS protest. Does the plan going forward include taking this to the next election? You talked about President Buhari on his way out. I mean, are young people now more aware of their political relevance, their political clout, and the potential power that they have to change things?
I think so. And the reason why I say I think so is because before the EndSARS, in our generation, you know, many people did not believe that a movement as powerful, as coordinated, as instrumental as this could ever happen. The tenacity of the citizenry, the unity of purpose. Listen, from the second week, the first day of the second week.
Yeah, but that has happened.
Yes.
What happens from here on?
Now,
we've got 30 seconds.
Yes. So, in moving forward, I think the people now realize that this can be done again and again and again. That is the lesson from EndSARS. And it is important also to state here, in closing,
right,
that because it has been done before and people can say it, it simply means that it will be done again.
Okay. Deji Adeyanju, the human rights activist, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.